The biggest transgender survey in the US is underway. Here's why it's important. Federal surveys like the US Census are gradually taking their transgender respondents into account, but they rarely ask specific questions unique to trans life. The US Trans Survey, on the other hand, is the largest survey in the country specifically geared towards trans and non-binary people. Conducted by the National Center for Transgender Equality, NCTE, and open until November 21st, its results will be quoted by journalists, academics, and legislators for the next 5 years. The survey is especially important now, given the intense focus on the rights of trans Americans in political arenas. Trans residents of the U.S. remain an understudied population that represents 0.5% of all Americans. There are an estimated 1.6 million trans people 13 and older living in the U.S., according to the Williams Institute, UCLA Law's LGBTQ think tank, but continue to be targeted by lawmakers. Josie Caballero, the director of the U.S. Trans Survey and Special Projects at the NCTE, says, quote, "This is the kind of data our community is desperate for fighting against bigotry that trans people have to endure," end quote. The U.S. Trans Survey asks trans and non-binary people a range of questions about their experiences living in the U.S. They'll be asked about their family life, health, and employment, for starters, along with newly expanded sections on COVID-19, incarceration, and school life, among others. Again, this is all about visibility. You know, oftentimes that T kind of gets dropped off of our community, and this is giving that outreach, that expression. We want to know what's important to people from all walks of life, and all of those updated things that are about, you know, what's happening now in 2022 are so important to getting a bigger picture and painting a more vivid picture.
Absolutely. I read an article a couple of weeks ago, which is fascinating, about the airports. When we go through the airline screeners and we have to put our arms up and stand on the things, that machine, the person working the machine can only push male or female. Those are the only two choices on the machine. And that's the way the computer is configured. So they look at the person coming through, they push what they think the person is, and then you stand there and you raise your arms and your body doesn't match up to what the button that they pushed, right? And they said an unbelievable amount of trans people are constantly being pulled out of line, strip searched, and they have to go through all this extra screening, and it's just because they don't match up to what the computer says. And so they've now told the airlines, you have to invest tens of millions of dollars and make these machines non-binary, so that they're not assuming that because of what someone might look like on the outside, that's what they're going to appear like on the machine. And that will cut down on a lot of the racism. And it was just interesting to me because it's one of those things where it's like, I would have never thought of that, right?
How exciting, too. But also, as someone who would be inventing these things, I wouldn't even think about that
exactly
initial prototype.
And that somebody's noticed it and told them they have to fix it. They said, you can't keep pulling trans people out of line and doing this to them. Like, you need to pay the money and fix that computer so that it's not discriminating against people.
The truth is, technology is only as good as the person who invented it.
Right.
I mean, it is obvious. I don't think anyone who are working in the technology field wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to hurt the community that I don't like. For example, certain AI programs have disproportionately square out Black Americans for, you know, or Asian Americans for other attributes. That's just not true, trans Americans included. The whole idea that programmer has to bear some responsibility to make sure that their target or their algorithm that includes like a wide variety of humans.
It's interesting you should use the term racism because it's, I think, more accurate than people realize. Most of the LGBT community, our differences from the general community are internal, whereas the trans community, it's a visible difference, and it does similarly equate to racism. I had a great interview recently with James Turcha, who's 2023 Mr. Ramrod, and he is a gentleman who's transgender. And he discusses it. He lives life as a gay man. it's not a problem for him. But for many people who are trans, while they're transitioning, it's like a second puberty. And during that time, it becomes very challenging because they may not express completely as their gender they identify as, but they also may not express completely as the gender they were assigned at birth. And it becomes very stressful for them because a lot of people will misgender them or make assumptions. And because it becomes a visible difference, similar to race, and that's the closest thing to it, really. And it's such a minority population that a lot of people just don't care to learn and to educate themselves.
Yeah, that's why I was happy that they're forcing the airlines to do it. I wonder, next time you talk to them, ask them, what's it like to travel? Because they probably hit the mail button, right?
Yeah.
And then the X-ray machine goes on and they go, hey, you got to get out of line. What's going on over here? And it's like, who wants to live like, you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's like, wow.
Absolutely.
But we're learning, right? Well, I mean, in this case, I was happy the airlines seemed willing. They were like, we'll spend the money. We didn't even realize.
Well, if they want gate space and TSA says you got to do it, then the check shall be written.
Yeah.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Lara are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ plus community.